are you cool if we just upload it to our repository, or you want us to also email it to you?
Oh yeah, just submitting it to the repository is fine. Yep. I pull everybody's code and look at it. Good question. Okay, so today we're going to talk about you've developed your application for your final, or maybe you're going to do one after this semester, or maybe you're going to go work for a company, and they say, we have this application, we're going to sell it on the App Store, but how do we monetize it? What's the best way to monetize it? So, because you're going to be making all this money, I thought I'd introduce a book to you called A Random Walk Down Wall Street. I mentioned this very briefly in a previous class, but this is one of my favorite books as an introduction to investing. So again, you're going to be making all this money from making your apps, right? And it's if you build it, they will come and buy your app, and you're just going to be flush with money. So. If you guys, again, for the computer science students that are going out to get jobs, we'll actually talk a little bit about income and salaries and that sort of thing. But hopefully you have a savings plan, because I guess a lot of the times older people will tell you, I just wish I would have invested in my 20s. I wish I had invested even earlier than that. So how do you get started? I want to say that the stock market returns over the long run are 9% interest rate. Now, if you think about, I've talked about checking account income. Checking accounts are about 1% at their best, and the stock market will do 9%. Now, it's for the last couple months, it's been down almost negative 10%. So you're like, oh, well, I shouldn't put money into the stock market, right? Well, that's actually the opposite. You should be putting money into it because, as we like to say, it's on sale. And then you want to invest in low-cost index funds. These are 0.05, and the comparison is if you look at most mutual funds, they're between 1 and 2% of every year. That's what they take out of your fund. So if you have, let's say, $1,000 in your mutual fund, they're going to take 2%, which is, 20 bucks every year, no matter if you made money or not. And that sucks. And so the index funds are 0.05%. So instead of 20 bucks, it's 50 cents, I believe. So a lot better. Now the individual stocks are for people who like to lose money. I actually own Tesla stock, and it was doing really great for a while there, and now it's back down to basically what I bought it for. And so yeah, that's a losing game, but index funds are the way to go. And finally, index funds. You can get stocks, bonds, and real estate, but if you want to know all about that, I recommend this book as a starting point, because as you can see from the cover, you can pick stocks better than the stockbrokers by just taking a dart and throwing it against the stock market chart. And he explains why that is, and he wonders why we pay these guys so much money to manage our mutual funds when they can't do any better than a monkey or a dart or anything like that. So good reading.
So like John.
Next,
they're good at sales.
yeah. Oh yeah.
They're in positions of power, and people are like, "Oh, I trust you." Okay.
Trust is a big thing, and then also it's a little intimidating getting into the stock market. What do I buy? There's hundreds of thousands of mutual funds that you can invest in. Another one I want to introduce you to is Mr. Money Mustache. This is a website/blog, and this is by a guy in Colorado who used to be a software engineer for about 10 years. And he and his wife decided that they didn't want to work anymore, so they saved up their money, and now they're retired, I think, by the age of 30. So for those of us that are past 30, our hopes and dreams are not yet lost, because he does talk about how he's done it. But if you guys are in your 20s, early 20s, start on this now, because you too could be retired by 30. And this guy doesn't do any magical, quick get-quick-rich schemes. He just, saves his money, talks about not going out to Starbucks, riding his bike more often. It's a really, really cool read, and just, you don't have to do 100% what he calls badassity, but a little bit of frugal / intelligent purchases goes a long way in saving your money. And again, he talks about index funds and putting your money into index funds to start growing that fund. And he just a very, very interesting blog. And so whenever I'm just like, oh, I don't want to work anymore, I go and read his blog, and that motivates me to save more money and that sort of thing. So anyway, it's this is stuff that I wish somebody had told me that your age, 20s, early 20s.
The problem is you can tell us an 18-year-old this or a 17-year-old, they're just not inclined to listen because they don't have the experience that you gain, which allows you to listen now.
Yeah. So anytime anybody older than me
talk
tells me
I talk to
something,
17, 18-year-olds.
Uh-huh.
We do scenarios back and forth. We talk about the time value of money.
yep,
And I have a few people that take me up on it.
exactly. There's always like
There's
one or
always
two
gonna be
students
one or
that.
two students like, I'm gonna do that.
Mm-hmm. So I'm
do
just
it.
putting it out there, and if you guys want to take a look, please do. The link is in the notes. Just click on that link there, or Google Mr. Money Mustache. I promise it will change your life if you read his introduction and a few of his blog posts. But yeah, electric bicycles, pretty cool stuff. He puts on all sorts of stuff on that website. All right, let's get started in actually making money yourself, or one way to do it. So the common path. Usually you guys are going to graduate from college, or maybe you already have a job. You're going to get paid. You're going to do what you're told. Your boss is going to say do this or do that, or use this technology that I know nothing about, but I heard on, Business Insider or some website blog that I read that it's a good technology, and I don't care what you say. You're going to use it, and then repeat. So that's kind of the boring path. That's, again, the common path, but boring. And these people that are telling you to do these things, they really don't have too much programming experience. The really great companies like Microsoft, Apple, Google, they're all founded by people that have a real intrinsic knowledge of technology, right? And so you get a lot of these people with a lot of money saying, I want to start a technology company because that's cool, right? It's the coolest thing to do, and I know a lot of these technology companies just make money hand over fist. So I'm going to start one. I don't know anything about technology, but I'm going to start one. And not only am I going to start one, but I'm going to run one. And I'm going to tell the developers and the people that do have these technical skills, i.e. you guys, what to do, how to do it, and all the stuff that you really, should be telling him. And so you'll find people like technical directors, people that are higher up, CTOs, they have no real technical skills. You ask them to write a piece of code, and I don't know, I got my business degree, or I read a lot of blogs, or I bought Google Glass when it came out. It's like those types of people that are consumers. They're not producers like you guys are. We produce applications, we produce code, we can write things that we come to our heads, right? We have interests, and we can say, I can turn that interest into a money-making proposition by either writing an app for it, making a website around it, or something like that, or doing that for somebody else. So these technical managers, I'm going to rip on them a little bit more. The decision makers with technology skills are rare. People that actually are able to code. And you'll find that these guys that actually are able to code are working for some of the best companies, because these companies are either started by them, or maybe there was a group of them that got together. There was a couple companies here in Boise that were founded by ex-HP employees. So these ex-HP employees, they're firmware developers. They're really low-level, smart guys that were working for a really large organization. They left, started their own company because they didn't want people to tell them what to do anymore. But those guys are rare, because a lot of people are getting into technology and technology companies because it's the cool thing to do, at least in my opinion. This is what I see day in and day out. And so you might think, well, why would I leave my job, my cushy HP job with great benefits, stock options, a huge organization that I can jump around in? If I didn't want to be here in Boise, I can move to their, I think, San Diego office, Palo Alto, excuse me. They're in Silicon Valley. To move there, get transferred, or actually I think they have a San Diego office. So you can get transferred around. You say, I want to move to San Diego. Let's get a job with HP San Diego. You can do that, but a lot of people say, why would I go and start my own company making $10,000 a year? Well, I want to say that nobody's a born leader. Nobody just goes out and says, I'm just going to start leading people. I'm going to tell people what to do. It takes practice. I was pretty much like all you guys, and I'm a computer scientist, playing video games in my dorm room, not able to talk to girls all that well. And then just I put myself out there. I did a bunch of things that we won't get into that. No, don't take it that way.
Experience. Right?
Experience, yeah. No, I mean, I worked for Apple. I'll go into a little bit just to clarify. I worked for Apple as a sales position, so telling people that they should buy Macs before it was cool to buy Macs. This is in the Power PC days. So these guys would come in looking for, I was in the bookstore at Virginia Tech, and parents would come in and say, hey, you guys sell Dells? I said, no, but we have this Apple computer, and what is your son or daughter's major? And they say, oh, it's chemistry, or it's, communications, and communications actually required Macs. So they would come in looking for a Dell, but it'd be like, oh, your major actually requires Macs, or it's chemistry. Let me show you this Macintosh computer that we have here. Oh, what's a Mac? Or that's incompatible with this. So this is the early 2000s, where again it was not cool to own a Mac. Now it's exploded. But that was putting myself out there and actually talking to people and reading people, seeing what they are coming in for, and then trying to turn that around and get their attention focused on something totally different. So that's what I mean by, I have different experiences that kind of broke me out of my shell. And yeah, we'll talk about girls later, but I will say that I was successful in that arena if you guys are curious about that. But anyway, we won't get into that. But it takes practice. Again, I wasn't just a born salesman. The first time that somebody came in, I was really nervous and everything like that. But over the years, just putting myself out there, doing talks at Virginia Tech on back in the day it was Macintosh development, and then eventually turned into iOS development. And then when I moved here to Boise, I got in contact with Amit here, and I said, you guys want to do a mobile class? And again, just putting myself out there constantly. And again, I'm not the best teacher in the world, but it's a lot better than where I was, let's say, 10 years ago or even longer than that. So that's what I mean by just putting it out there. It takes practice. Go on lynda.com, look at the public speaking tutorials, I guess you'd call them, or mostly it's just advice. They say, do this, do that, that sort of thing. But those are actually excellent tutorials on public speaking, being a teacher. Even though some of you guys actually are teachers. You guys probably.
Probably use a refresher.
Exactly. I mean, again, I'm not above looking at introductory Android tutorials, because again, new ways of doing things, and sometimes the new ways are not always the best way, especially with teaching. But with technology, that's usually true. The new way is probably the better way to doing it. But having the experience, you can look at the old way and the new way, compare them, and maybe take a little bit of both, and have a hybrid version of that. So then finally, nobody's going to give you the responsibility that you have no experience in. And so if you want to be a mobile developer, and let's say you haven't taken this class, but you work for a company and you say, I want to be a mobile developer. This is cool stuff. This is really awesome. I want to do this. You're not going to be able to just go to your boss and say, hey, let's go get a client that wants a mobile app done. Because one, the client's not going to pay your company to do something that you've never done before. And so how do you get around this? How do you get over this hurdle? And I think it comes back every single time this answer comes up. It's you must make it yourself, either for your company or for yourself. And so if you're into motorcycles, I had a couple students last year that were into motorcycles. They made a motorcycle maintenance application. So maintenance on your motorcycle, that was just their passion. They made it for themselves. And now they have an app that they can say, I made this, I want to be an application developer. And obviously it's not going to be just one, hey, I made an app, now I'm an I'm an app developer. It does take practice, just like being a leader, but at least you have something finished so you can say, this is what I made. Because you'll find that most people that are application developers haven't actually finished an application. They'll say, oh, well, I started this application here, and it's about 50% done. And then I got together with some friends, and I put together this, but that's not done. And then I did some research in another, and it's like, okay, what do you actually have on the App Store? What do you have to, what is out there? Show me something. And so you'll see a lot of these job postings for mobile app developers will say, show us what you have on the App Store, links to your app in the App Store. And if you have a nice long list, I mean, you almost don't need to look at the apps themselves. Or if I click on a few and they look pretty decent, go, wow, that guy has a lot of experience. The apps aren't probably the best, but that's a lot of experience. rather than just having maybe one or two. But if those one or two are really high quality applications, then that also speaks volumes for experience. And so it's a mismatch, or it's a trade-off, whether you want to spend a lot of time on one application or you just want to throw a whole bunch out there. We'll talk about that and making money in a second. And so these job interviews that you might be looking at, job posting as I just mentioned, you'll submit a resume and maybe you'll have some internships and some clubs and some awards and classes that you've taken here in college, and that's pretty much what everybody has, and that's what I had when I started out. But I will say that I've never had an interview for any job that I've ever worked at, which doesn't say a lot because I've only had two, but I haven't had, just because my networking and building up that kind of thing, I said, well, I didn't tell them, but they were like, hey, you want to come work for us? I said, yeah, sure, absolutely. So anyway, bullet point number 2 here, you go and try to prove you're worth your salary. So, you want a job for $40,000, you want a job for $60,000, or you want a job for $100,000, even more. I encourage more, of course. You're going to have to try to prove that. If you have no job experience, if you have no applications under your belt, you'll basically have the entry-level salary, and that sucks because entry-level positions and entry-level salaries are terrible. And when you enter in a job that has an entry-level position, it's really, really hard for most companies to really ramp. You're never going to become CTO these days of any company that you've come in as an entry-level position for, unless it's a startup and you're like one of 2 people. And in that case, maybe you can become CTO or whatever you want to be in a few years' time. What you have to do is come into it with experience. You have to have some kind of, a portfolio, let's say, and hopefully some bigger and bigger prospects that you've been working on. It doesn't just have to be apps. A good thing that I always look for is GitHub repository and GitHub repository activity. So if I look at somebody and they have 40 different GitHub repositories on there because they're putting code out there, they're just writing shell scripts that they just want to share. Kenny was one of these kids that you have all sorts of scripts on there, shell scripts, terminal themes that he wrote himself to color the terminal text and everything like that. Really cool stuff. And he just had it up on his GitHub repository that he could point to and say, this is what I did. And then not only that, as you can see, the activity that you've contributed code to other projects. And so if you've contributed to, let's say, the Twitter Bootstrap library, the framework, and that's cool. And like if there's projects out there that you've contributed to, that means that you're able to work in teams, that you're self-motivated. I mean, it speaks volumes for what you're able to do. And so instead, go out and do your own thing. And so instead of trying to prove that you're worth this salary, just go and show it. Just here's my GitHub repository. Look at all the projects I've done. Now we use Bitbucket in this class because you can have private free repositories. But I highly recommend going out and get a GitHub repository or a GitHub account, and then just start contributing code to open source projects. It'll show you how to really use Git. That's obvious, but contribute to projects where you're crafting your code in order to send it up and say, here's my code, rip it apart, review it, and make sure you're matching the format, the code style that they have, and all these different things that you don't get in class, or maybe they covered in class but never really put into practice. And so do that. Do something. Go out and do something. Because a lot of these times the interviewers usually have no experience themselves. This isn't my experience. But what I mean by that is they have no interview experience. You might be talking to some low-level firmware developer who you're going to be working with, and maybe he's a little bit higher up, but he has no real interview skills. He's not going to ask you, unless it's from a book, real interview questions. And so just get good at just talking to people, and small talk is good, but also be very conscious of how you present yourself. Don't be overly confident. Don't be, and if you are overly confident, make it a joke. Just be like, yeah, I'm the best mobile developer here in Boise. Is that true? I don't know. It is, by the way. So, creating your own thing. Who wouldn't want somebody to generate $100,000 to $400,000 a year? This is what you guys can actually generate at your jobs, both economically, but also in terms of what clients will pay for the work that you have done. When I first started my job, when I started my first job out of college, in the first 3 months, I think, I generated $50,000 of revenue for my company. And that was a lot more than I was being paid at the time. And so you extrapolate, say, well, I'm making you guys $200,000 and you're only paying me $40,000, which was my starting salary at the time as a computer scientist, software engineer, let's call me, making $40,000 in my first job. And I was like, I could do that. Like, I won't say it was by myself because I was working in a team, but I did about 90%. There was a project manager on top of that, and there was a little bit of design. The design took maybe a day, 2 days to do, and in 3 months' time, I generated, the project was worth $50,000, okay? So I won't say that I did 100% of that $50,000, but yeah, I did 90% of the work because 90% of the work was programming. And so I was like, well, I could do that myself. And so as a developer who can manage your own teams, so if you're working in teams or you're working in groups, that sort of thing, you can do requirements. You can go to the client and say, okay, what are your requirements for this project? You can do project estimation. Okay, now that I have the requirements, here's how long I think it's going to take, and that comes with experience. And then finally, budget. You can say, well, this is what I estimate it to be. I estimate it to be, let's say, 100 hours, but it's going to cost $10,000 for the designer. It's going to cost $20,000 to get the 3D models made and animated and yada, yada, yada. And now you're looking at a budget of about $30,000. I need to make a profit off that. So my project estimation needs to be obviously more than what my budget is. And not only that, is if you run over budget, you're not pulling money out of your own pocket. So these are really things that you should know as an employee, even if you don't want to go work for your own company, because what's going to happen is you're going to get these responsibilities anyway, and if your boss doesn't think you can do it, they're not going to give it to you. And again, that goes back to the previous slide. If nobody's going to give you a job that you have no experience in. So if you have some kind of experience, maybe it's just freelance work that you've done and you did project estimation, you did all that fun stuff, you can at least say, I've done it before, and this is why in this class we have you do contracts and project estimation, just to give you a little bit of experience, just to show you that it's not that intimidating. And once you know that, you pretty much know all the basics that CEOs and CTOs know, minus the people skills that they have. And if you guys ever watched Office Space with, I forget the exact character, but he's talking to the Bobs, and the Bobs are saying, what do you do here? He's like, I'm a people person. I take the requirements from the clients, and I walk them down to the engineers. And that's literally his job, is he takes a piece of paper from the client and walks it down. And you'll find that those types of jobs really do exist. And those are mostly called client managers. Those are client managers that do that. Project managers do a lot more planning. They do a lot of the project estimation and that sort of thing. But going back, a lot of them don't have technical skills. And so if you're working at an engineering firm that builds stuff, actual stuff, most of those project managers have engineering degrees. A lot of them have a PM, which is a professional engineer, or a PE, which is a professional engineering license. In computer science and software development, you get project managers that have, not to make fun of them, but like humanitarian, or humanities, humanities or psychology or whatever degrees. And that's fine, but when you're talking about software development and how software development works, you really need to have those technical skills in order to understand the project that you're managing. So that's my rip on non-technical project managers and everything like that. Not to say that those majors aren't good for other things. Finally, not finally, but let's get into apps as a business. So in the first time in history, within the last, let's say, 5 or 10 years, it is extremely easy to make money. Now you say, well, if it was so easy, everybody would be doing it, right? Well, actually, everybody is doing it. You got people, it started in the United States with app development. I made and sold my first application, I think winter of 2004, 2003, 2004. And it wasn't a whole lot of money, but it kind of opened my eyes to the potential that, you write an application once and then you can sell it to millions without having to lift a single finger. And so one-man shops can generate huge profits. Flappy Birds, as an example of a one-man shop, made $50,000 per day. Can you imagine that? I mean, in a month, you never have to, well, in a couple days, in a week, in a couple weeks, you never have to work again. But in a month, in a year, this guy was just making money hand over fist. Now, this is an extreme example, but we'll talk about a little bit more realistic results later in this in these slides. But that's just one success story. It's not an overnight success. I think that app was on the App Store for months, if not a year, before it actually started taking off, and who knows why. And then you see all these clones of Flappy Birds or that sort of thing. But and then finally, in this list, WhatsApp is 32 engineers, so that's not a whole lot. The company I first started working for at a college, we only had about 24, 25, and we worked for companies like Hasbro, Verizon Wireless, T-Mobile. We did a lot of their product demos in Flash and that sort of thing, web-based presentations. But 32 engineers, they just sold their company, it was last year sometime, $19 billion. I mean, that's 19,000 millions. That's a whole lot of money. I mean, that's you can't even fathom how big that is. I mean, $1 million is a lot of money, but $19,000 million. Or 19,000 times a million if you didn't follow that. Okay, so how do we generate our own money? So there are three main revenue generators. Of course, there's other ones. You can do ad placements. You can do, if you have a YouTube channel, you can talk about somebody's brand for like 2 seconds. If any Android brands want to sponsor me, I'll stand up here and talk about your brand for about 30 seconds and $5,000 a pop, that sort of thing. And those are quite lucrative. But for the rest of us, we have ad-supported, paid apps, and then business-to-business, which I'll talk about. That's mostly what I do, but we'll talk about the first two in depth, and then later I'll talk about the third one from experience. Ideas are cheap. Everybody has an app idea, but those who can't execute their ideas are simply dreamers. Those that can implement are masters of their own domain. So if you can make whatever you want, you can be the master of anything that you want to be. And this is a really powerful skill. This is like a superpower that we have as software developers. If you have an idea, you can build it. It's that easy. With the right skills, of course. But more realistic, you might be working on a small dev team, maybe a friend, a classmate, or somebody that's taken this class that you hook up with and start building apps. And you're either building apps for a client, I know some of you actually have clients that you're building your apps for, or you're building it for yourself because it's a Pokemon or League of Legends or it's whatever you're passionate about. That's wonderful. I highly encourage that because if you're passionate about it, there's other people. No matter how weird you think you might be, there's always people out there that share that same interest. And so that's the power of the internet is to find people with the same interest and build them apps. Build apps for people who can't build apps themselves and make money off of them or, at least generate ad revenue or something like that. And then hopefully you can build up a couple hobby applications like I just mentioned and generate about $50 to $100 a month. That's, put a little bit of work into it. This is not something that just comes easily like the $50,000 a day type thing. But if you're selling consistently 1 or 2 apps a day or 2 or 3 apps a day, it's very easy to do, then you're generating $50 to $100 a month. That doesn't sound like a lot of money. That's definitely not something to quit your job over, but take that money and invest it. And then that money will grow at 9% over the long term in the stock market. Okay, so another way that we make money in apps is in-app purchases. And so I just started playing Star Wars Heroes of the Galaxy or whatever like 2 days ago, and I see all these in-app purchases, and I'm like, oh, this is a free game, but all these different things that you want to advance your characters, that sort of thing. I saw one in-app purchase. It was like, oh, go to the store because there's a special going on now. And we won't talk too much about sales, but that's one little sales thing that they do is limited time offer, right? Like you have to do it now. So I clicked on it. I was just curious what it was because I just started playing the game. It was an in-app purchase for $50, $49.99 to be specific. And I was like, oh my God, like don't touch any buttons that you don't want to like accidentally purchase that, because I'm sure it would make me type in my password. But I was like, oh my God, like, you know, that's incredible. And they gave you like 2 characters and a whole bunch of gems and currency. I don't know what they gave you. I was just, but my point is, when you're doing in-app purchases, you actually don't want to limit what people will spend on your application. You don't want to say, well, I'm going to only have $1.99 or 99-cent in-app purchases, because those are people. There are people out there that just love your game or your application that will end up spending that much money for whatever reason. I have no idea why. I think it's like alcoholism. Honestly, it's a disease. $50 on virtual goods. I mean, to buy the game in the first place, I would almost pay, not for that game, but I would definitely pay $50 for an entire game. But $50 just for consumable goods, we can talk about that a little bit more later in the semester. But you know, if you're generating revenue off of consumable goods, meaning things that are consumed or disappear within the game, that's a really awesome revenue generation, because now you're talking about, well, not only is somebody going to pay money for these things that are just going to go away and they're going to have to do it again, but that means that people are actually really loving your game. And so it's a cool kind of feedback loop that you get on those things. But anyway, okay, so what you can also do is show users how useful your app can be and why they should unlock those additional features. So for the games that I was mentioning where you get currency, that's pretty obvious. But let's say you want to do a free version of your app, but all the advanced features you want to lock away and make somebody pay either 99 cents or $1.99. And you want to say, well, for 99 cents, you're helping a developer, you're doing this, you're doing that, and you get all these benefits. So show users how useful your app can be if you're doing in-app purchases. Don't just put it out there and say, hey, you know, spend $50 on me because it's cool. People won't do that. But at the same time, don't disallow people from doing that, because there'll be the 1 or 2 people that actually do that. And when you sell one $50 package, that's way more than obviously $1 or $1.99. It's 50 times more than that. So really, really powerful things that sometimes you get lucky with. And then ads are great for apps that get a lot of views. So if your app is something that somebody checks every day, be it email or maybe some messaging app or something like that, something that they open often, ads are a great candidate for your ad generating revenue, because what's going to happen is every time somebody views that ad, you get a ad impression. And the ad impression, it depends on what the ads are and how much people are bidding on them. We won't get too much into that, but it's a few cents per 1,000 views. So you get a few thousand views and you get a few cents. And sometimes they're as high as 40 cents per 1,000. And that sort of thing. So obviously those numbers should tell you that you need a lot of views in order to get real money. And so I have some numbers I'll show you later in this talk. Actually, I'll do that right now. Oops. Okay, so here is my actual AdSense dashboard for a couple of properties that I own, and you'll see that the current balance is $68.68. So it's not a whole lot of money, because I've been doing this since I think 2007, 2008 using AdSense, and that's as much money that I've earned over those 8 years. So it's really not a lot of money. You can see I've made 3 cents so far today. Yesterday I made 7 cents. That's pretty cool. Last 7 days I made 15, which is down 6.3%. And the last basically month I've made $1.42. Not too bad, but yeah, I mean, Google doesn't send you out a check until it reaches $100. So no, I've never gotten paid. Yeah, that's yeah, that money has been slowly accruing. But what I will say is, again, that's a lot more money than a checking account interest will give me. because in this last month I made $1.42. Maybe you make $1.42 on your checking if you have, it's 1%, $12,000.
Do you have to put this on your taxes? Or not until you get paid?
Not until I get paid, but also if you have, and don't quote me on this, but if you have a single payer that gives you less than $500, you don't have to claim it. $600, okay, yeah. I don't know the exact number, but it's, yeah, if somebody gives you like $100, you don't need to claim it on your taxes. But yeah, so really poor. So what I did want to show you on this one was specifically underneath the platforms is high-end mobile devices. It's $1.36 that I've of that money that I showed you at $1.42. $1.36 of that was, or roughly, those numbers don't add up, but was from mobile apps. So yeah, not a whole lot of money. So this is AdMob. This is the Google version of ads. And then we have AdSense for content, which is the websites. So not a whole lot of money from the websites. A little bit of money from the mobile apps. And I'll show you the mobile app that we have. I'll go through the downloads at the end of the slides here. But let's talk about business to consumer, or B2C. So business to consumer is a business like myself selling apps or selling a service or that sort of thing to the populace. Everyday people that can just go on, or it's, maybe it's it is people of a specific market, but it's generally the populace. It's not another business, which would be B2B, or business to business. So B2C in this case is selling apps on the App Store, and so most apps are in this model. However, I'll show you another version of this. And this is also including apps with ads. I will say that you don't want to mix these two. You don't want to have, or I should say, you don't want to mix having ads with purchases. So if you purchase an app, I expect it to be ad free, and I'll show you some comparisons of the two later. And one of my favorite sayings I like to say to tell people kind of about this whole business is it takes a lot of $1 downloads to make a living, and you can imagine that's very true, but it's also even more true when Apple or Google takes 30% of that $1. And so I should say it takes a lot of 70-cent downloads to make a living. Now, of course, if you add, if you have $1.99, that's different, but you get the idea. And so I have this ROI, or return on investment chart, and everything you do in business is basically an investment. And so if in this example, if I have $2,100, you probably can't see that, but in that upper left-hand corner, this is the Excel spreadsheet that I believe I've committed to the repository. Cost of development. If you're going to put in $2,100 into the cost of your application, you're going to pay somebody else to do this for you. This is often what I show clients. The cost of the app is 99 cents. The store's cut, be it Apple or Google, is 30 cents of that. And then the revenue is technically, 69 cents. And how many 69-cent downloads does it take to make back $2,100? And so if you're just kind of putting your app up on the App Store, you're going to get what's in the yellow here is 1 to 3 downloads a day, maybe. And so after 12 months, if you have 3 downloads a day, that's $748 a year. That's not bad, but it's very far from your goal of $2,100, right? And so how many downloads per day do you need to make your money back? And so if we start with the extreme, and I have 100 downloads a day, which is the bottom of this chart, after 1 month, I only have $2,079. And I say only because it still hasn't reached my initial investment. And so after 2 months, then I've reached $4,158. And so the green is where I've reached I've passed my point of what I've put into it. I've now received more back. Now obviously you have to subtract $4,100, subtract $2,100 from that, and so your profit after 2 months with 100 downloads a day is $2,000. But then it's pure profit from there, pretty much. So if you think you can sell 10 apps a day which is this middle row here. How many months is that going to take you in order to get back your investment? If we look over here, it's going to take you about 11 months to return on your investment. That's actually not too bad. That's a pretty good, slow growth rate. And then beyond that, it's the next year you're basically doubling your investment. And so that's an awesome investment. Who wouldn't want to make 100% of their investment every single year? So look at it that way. Don't just say, well, I'm only making $2,000. You've only put in $2,000, and now you're making $2,000 every single year. Now, of course, the numbers are going to change because as your app gets older, it might fall out of favor, so you have to kind of maintain a little bit. But if you can increase that from 10 downloads a day to 15 downloads a day, which is obviously only 5 difference, you can make that money back in 7 months rather than 11. So this Excel spreadsheet is up there. You can play around with these numbers up here. You can say instead of charging 99 cents, I can put in $1.99 and see how the green just explodes of how much more profitable you are.
They still only take 30 cents per download?
Yes. So 30%.
Oh.
So it's 60 cents off of the $1.99. Yeah.
I don't see the Excel spreadsheet.
Okay. I'll make sure I commit it. I think it's up there. It might be in example documents in the folder called example documents. And let me know if it doesn't work, just because of the file format or something.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so running your own business comes client communications. And what I mentioned before was app ideas. And everybody has an app idea. And everybody wants you to build their apps because they can't do it themselves. And that's not a bad thing because I wouldn't have any business if everybody could build their own apps. But I just wanted to share some of these emails with you. All names have been removed to protect the innocent. But we have emails, and these are verbatim. I might have removed like a name or something like that. I would like to speak to somebody about creating an app. I'm curious about the timetables and costs involved in the creation process. An email or phone call would be greatly appreciated. I look forward to hearing from your team. So this is just a nice, cordial, maybe I have money, but I don't know anything about app development, and I'm looking to speak to somebody who does. So this is what that email is, and this is pretty typical. So be prepared to talk to somebody real, and talk about money too. There's no shame in talking about getting paid for what you do, especially for a living. When you have a salary, it's just kind of expected, right? But when people run their own business, people are shy about talking about money. I'm a little shy, but I'll share some numbers with you at the end. Okay, here's another email. Was wondering if someone can give us a call in regards to an application development. Okay, that's short and sweet. It doesn't tell me a whole lot. Usually I don't respond to these emails. I just get too many of these things, and you haven't told me anything, and I don't know who you are. Here's another one. This one's kind of one of my favorites. Hi, I have an idea for an app that I believe could be very successful and lucrative. Unfortunately, I do not have the skills to create it. I am seeking a partnership with somebody who would be willing to go 50-50. Please reply if interested. Swear to God, real email. Yeah, I definitely didn't reply to this one because he's essentially asking me to do all the work, and just because he had the idea, we're going to split the profits equally. Don't ever do that. Especially if you have a friend that's like in the business class or doing his MBA or her MBA, and she comes up to you and says, I got this great idea for an app and I want you to develop it for me, but I don't know how to do it, but I'll run the business side of it. Now, running a business is not that hard. You don't need him or her to.
What do you think a fair like?
90-10, be honest with you. Ideas are worthless, like I mentioned in the beginning. Yeah, people are really, a lot of these emails will say, yeah, I'll before I discuss any details, I want you to sign an NDA. I'm like, I'm not going to sign an NDA because I'm going to rack up all these NDAs that I'm supposed to be under, and then eventually I won't be able to talk about anything because, everybody has an idea about something. And so I never sign an NDA unless it's from an actual business who has an actual product or business practice, and they say, we have this thing that exists. We don't want to share that information or insider information of that business working with you until you sign this NDA, and we want to extend that business with an app. And so those cases, I will sign an NDA. But those are those are the only ones I'll sign NDAs for. So yeah, that's I love these emails. And then another short one. Please contact me regarding app development. It's like, for what? Please give me a little bit of context. Let me know who you are. Because again, everybody has an app idea, and these are just emails that I get. Okay, so what I like to do instead of dealing with customers, because customers unfortunately don't have a lot of money, and as a business, I like to make money. So other businesses I should say, tend to have more money to spend. So businesses that are successful and up and running look at everything as an investment. So they might spend $10,000, $50,000 on your application or to develop the application, but they're looking at it in the long run. We're going to turn that $50,000 investment into $5 million as we promote our platform and extend our platform or business practice that we already have in place. So again, they look at it more as an investment. It's pennies to them. And then they also understand it costs money to make money. And so again, they're putting in a little bit of money in order to turn that little bit of money into more money. They're not just building apps because it's fun. They're trying to make money. And I really appreciate that because they understand that. They know that we have to pay somebody in order to get what we want. Rather than the guy that was like, hey, I have an app idea, 50-50 because I have no money. It's like, no thanks. All right, so again, when it comes to making money, they just understand how to do it. So I like working with businesses more. Here's one. So this is from a business, and it was either signed from a business or had a business email address, not a Gmail, not a Yahoo, not an MS Live or whatever email address. Fluffy Bunny at MSDN or not MSDN, Hotmail.com, that sort of thing. John at infoincorporated.com, something like that. So this email, we are currently developing a new product and we need to outsource an app developer. I would like to schedule a brief chat about our needs and to see if your company is able to create the functionality, again, verbatim. Please provide a contact number, preferred hours of contact. Look forward to hearing from you. So this is really nice because it's also being a little bit respectful of my time, saying, give me your phone number and then let me know when I can call you, and then we can kind of schedule that meeting. Rather than I'm just going to call you whenever because I'm the most important thing in the world. It's like, no, I got other things to do. Thank you. So I love this email. This is a great email. Okay, so let's actually talk about numbers. Actually, nope, this is in the slides. Okay, so here are my numbers. You probably can't see it because it's really, really tiny, especially if you're in the back. This is just for a period. I'm just going to go over this. This is our NetPing application. You can see it has 402. I do believe this is in the last 3 months. I'll go over these numbers a little bit more specifically. NetRef, which is a wireless router manual repository, but it also has functionality in NetRef. It does pinging servers, so you can put in a server IP address and it'll ping it, or you can put in the domain and then it'll do a lookup of the IP, yada, yada, yada. So those two applications actually share functionality, but I broke out the functionality from NetRef and made its own application, which is wildly more popular because NetRef is $1 purchase and NetPing is free, and so the downloads are a little over 3 times the amount that NetRef is. And then we have Boise's Most Wanted. I need to update that application. That's a free application specifically for the Boise market, so you can see that the downloads there are pretty low. We have another one that's for the New River Valley, which is in Virginia. It's a very, very, very specific small town Virginia, so it only has 20 downloads. And then one called the Platte Avenger. If you guys ever taking a World Regions class or something like that, this textbook might have been taught, but the professor that created that textbook taught at Virginia Tech, and he makes comic books for his textbooks, and they're really cool. But we took some of those comic books and turned them into an app, and you can flip through the comic book. That one's free. It only has 19 downloads, so nothing big at all in the last 3 months. So here's a little bit more specific on NetPing. Again, it's free. At the time that I took these stats, it got about 400 downloads a month. Again, free, so I made no money off of this. And that breaks down to about 14 downloads a day. So if you go back to that chart, obviously if I started charging, I would not get this many downloads a day. But you can look at about how many again, you type in the server address, you can do ping, you can do continuous ping, it tells you your latency, packet, yada, yada, yada. And so an app of this nature, it's very specific to developers or IT professionals or just people that want to ping their server. This is about how many downloads a day you'll get. Here's the graph over time for that. So United States is a big consumer of this product. China, Japan, Indonesia, Saudi Arabia, United Kingdom, etc. So you can see this is a tool called App Annie. It gives me all the analytics on my application downloads for both app stores. Here's the downloads for NetRef. This one's 99 cents. Boise's Most Wanted, that's free. And so you can see just, obviously the NetPing one, which is free and a little bit more, a broader market, gets a lot more downloads than these little guys. The scales are different, obviously, too. So, but a lot more activity on the free one that has a broader market. Okay, so sales and downloads, tours of downloads and sales. So this is actual numbers. These numbers are kind of old. This comes from last year's numbers, but they're still fairly true. I haven't looked up what these are now, but I still like to keep around the average. So the last 5 applications that we did at a cost or at a price tag of $113,000. So that breaks down to about $22,000 per application. Now remember what you did for project, or homework 2, where you actually took your hours and you took your hourly rate, you combined them to get the cost of your application. I don't think anybody close to $22,000 per app, and that's fine. Obviously you're coming in not knowing how to build apps, and that's why you're taking this class. But this is kind of a little low, because what ended up happening was, for this particular case, I had an application that I did for just, I don't know what you call them, just an everyday person. She had her own business, but she really didn't have a whole lot of money to spend. And so we did the app for $43.90 was the app for that. But it was a pretty cool card game. Lots of animations, lots of graphics, etc. like that. So that was a really low. I kept that cost extremely low. But that brings the average down. The highest we did was $45,000. That was for a mobile game that we did. We'll talk about that. I think the next class we'll talk about game development, and game development specifically for mobile. So we did a mobile game that was $45,000. We are now actually working on version 2.0 of that at a price tag of about $35,000. So games are really, really lucrative. And now this is not income, unfortunately, for me. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't be standing up here in front of you guys. That's not true. I love you guys, so I'd stand up here anyway. These are the costs of the applications this is what we charge the clients. And then we have costs for development, for designers, for overhead, just general overhead, that sort of thing. So yeah, don't think I make, I don't know, the last 5 applications. These are just numbers to, again, not brag, but just to kind of give you a sense of what real world numbers, and again, this is just from my point of view, what real world numbers actually yield at the rates that I'll be talking about, that sort of thing. So a lot of you had rates of about $20 an hour. And I said, that's probably fine, but you probably want to bump that up. A lot of you just said, I'm going to charge $50 an hour, and that's cool. $50 an hour is a pretty good rate. If you're working full time at that rate, that's about $100,000 a year. But you're not always going to be working on billable projects. And so what ends up happening is you have to charge more like $75 an hour, which would be equivalent to $150,000 a year. But that's not working full time. You're not always going to be working on billable projects. You're going to be answering emails. You're going to be just doing, like, for lack of a better term, secretarial work, answering emails, sending, mail, working on your website, working on portfolio stuff, like just, the hard, down and dirty stuff that when you're rich and you have a lot of money, you hire other people to do that for you, because your time is better spent working on apps or telling other people how to work on apps, that sort of thing. So again, I just want to throw these numbers at you just to give you some realistic numbers, but this is fairly accurate. This is last year's numbers, but still pretty fairly accurate. All right, and then again, you're making all this money, right? or you're not, because you're paying everybody else all the money, and you see little pittance of profit. But what to do with that profit? So I said, the stock market makes about 9%. If you take the arithmetic average, so taking all the years, adding them up, and then dividing it by the number of years, you'll get 11.5%. But that's not how the stock market works, right? So stock market goes up, goes down, goes into the negative. And so the arithmetic average is a terrible way of measuring the stock market, because what actually happens is it's the geometric average, which is, if you guys don't know, you should, because you're all math minors almost, if you're a computer science student, that the geometric average is multiplication. So you take all the numbers, all the years, multiply them up, and then divide them. And then there's actually, you take the square root of those numbers. And so that gives you what you'll actually make. And so what you'll actually make from 1928 to 2013 is 9.5% on the stock market. Now, if you go within the last decade, 2004 to 2013, which is a pretty terrible year for the stock market, that was the housing bubble, yada, 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 still 7.34%. I'll put my money in that any day. If you know some hot tech stock that you want to put your money into, feel free to do it, but honestly, it's a terrible average. And then even real estate, talked about real estate a little bit. Just giving you numbers so that when you go out into the real world, or if you're already out there, real estate investing, it's like this big thing that everybody seems to do that's rich, right? Even somebody that's running for president is a big mogul in real estate investing. But what does it actually mean? So if you take a $120,000 apartment that you buy and you're renting it out for $900 a month, and the mortgage on that, including principal, interest, all that fun stuff, is $750 a month. Again, the rent is $90. Your income on that is $150 a month. That's not too terribly bad, but the yearly income on that is $1,800. And so with these numbers are pretty low, you can get some pretty good returns on that. And so the return on investment for that $120,000, assuming you put 20% down, which is kind of what you need to do, is 7.5%. So I just wanted to compare what real estate invests in, just as one example, right? 7.5% in real estate, or you can go with the stock market that does 9.5 over the long term, or 7.3 over the last decade or so. So again, just wanted to give you numbers so that you guys have seen this, and that you just don't go in the real world and you're like, oh, nobody told me this, because that's what I did. I was like, nobody told me any of this stuff. I wish I would have known.
No one told me not to become a teacher.
Yeah, don't become a teacher. I don't know why.
All this is moot.
Well, no, that's not true. You could be a teacher and then have a side app business, making your own apps and selling them on the App Store, and this is why I'm giving you all these numbers. Yeah, the downloads, that sort of thing is kind of hard, but if you can make $100 a month, it's pretty. That's a nice place to then start investing that money and making it grow. But if you can do more than that, if you can, get a client or get a company to hire you. I know some of you actually have clients that you're working with that, they'll pay you some money. But again, how much money should you be charging for your app? Well, hopefully you've done the project estimation. You know how many hours you think it's going to take. Usually with our hours, I'll triple the hours. So whatever hours it's going to be, we have an internal hourly rate, and then I triple it. Not because I think it's going to take me 3 times as long. I think it's going to take me twice as long, because with client back and forth, it ends up taking a lot of time answering emails, that sort of thing. We built that into the price, and then the extra X on that price tag is for hopefully profit. And you're not doing it at a cost, because you wouldn't make any money. So that's where we get that. So usually I base it off the hourly rate. Cool. So that's all I got for you guys. We're going to cover for the last 10 minutes Project 2, unless you guys have questions about money, making money off the App Store.
Okay, I got a couple
Yep,
questions.
go ahead.
One, what do you think the demand is for freelancing as a teacher? You just went over that, but like if I want to work in the summer, is there still demand out there for small projects?
Yeah, small projects, that's kind of hard to say. I mean, everybody has an app idea, so whether you want to go and work for somebody who has an app idea or you just want to do one yourself, I'd recommend almost every single time work for yourself and do your own app ideas rather than working for somebody else, because it's a lot more stress. But if you can get a quick 3,000 work on it for like a couple weekends, that's awesome, because those tend to be low stress and easy to do. However, you also find that those inexpensive jobs tend to be the most demanding because the people, they don't understand. Say, well, I'm paying you $3,000. This is a lot of money. I expect like high quality stuff. And you're like, actually, that's not a lot of money. And so you got to be careful with who you actually work with. And so I would put all my focus into your own idea and your own application if you think it's going to make money. But again, if you can find somebody that's going to pop a few $1,000 on your plate for doing stuff, that's how I started. We had a local business in Blacksburg, Virginia, that said, we want an app. We have this website. We're selling this product. Can you make an app that uses the branding but really has nothing to do with our business? And they paid me $1,400, which seemed like a lot of money at the time. And that ended up buying my first Intel Mac because I needed an Intel Mac. I had a PowerPC Mac to do mobile development on. So that bought my computer, and then so I rolled that into the business. But if you can find one that gives you a few $1,000s for a little bit of work, and you don't mind basically working for free because that's what you're going to end up doing, because you might think it's going to take you 40 hours and it ends up taking you 400 hours, that you're okay with that. So just know what you're getting into. I don't want to deter you, but encourage you too much. I just want to be realistic with that. So hopefully that answered your question. Yeah. Any other questions?
Do you have any resources for copyright? The app I'm making is pretty similar to one that exists.
Okay. For copyright?
Yeah, is there any issues with infringing?
Oh,
You go to source.
are you talking about other applications or?
Yes. Yeah. So like my app looks a lot like the one that I was asked to make. Looks
Oh.
Like there's one that's out there.
Okay, so there's actually a local company called Aptitex, which they do. It's started by the same guy that did Mark Monitor. So Mark Monitor was trademark monitoring, and he started another company with basically the same idea, but for mobile apps called Aptitex. That's what they do. That's a service that you probably end up paying for. So they're out there. I don't know of any free ones actually. Mike, Mike works for Aptitex. Yeah. So anyway, yeah. Hopefully, I explained your business right. Right? Is that right? Okay. Yeah. So I did that last time. That I was talking about a business, Zenware. Actually, I was talking about Zenware, and I was like, "Yeah, has anybody heard of Zenware?" And one of my students raised their hand. Oh, I actually work for them. I was like, I should know more about my students. But anyway, so that's all I got for you for this one. We're gonna